everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Hard Claim with Viva La Sam. I'm Sam, and this is a show where we talk to people who play below in a clock tower and get their player perspective of the game. Joining us for this week's episode is Steve. Thank you for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. All right, well, we do like to start with our opening hard claim question. You've requested to load in Sex and Violets, so I'll pass out characters. You have drawn the Klutz token.
It's much sordid past, I'm sure.
So if we were chatting day one, what character would you, or what would you claim to somebody if we were chatting day one?
My first thought is that I don't want to be near the end because I don't really want to negatively affect the game results with this, with the picks and being done. But I also don't necessarily want to die too early. I might kind of bluff a little bit of middle of the ground information rolls, like maybe a seamstress with a once per game. I might throw a flower girl in there. Game this size, I might even throw in an outsider into that claim just to kind of feel what people are thinking. I tend to be seen as a little bit on that outsider menu level and affecting things anyway, so I think I'd kind of play into it.
Yeah. How much do you worry about getting Fengu jump to?
Well, I'd prefer not to. I'd prefer to be on the good team just because I like to kind of tell the stories, make sure that we kind of solve things a little bit. I may not be best at getting to the solve. Worried about things you jump. I'm aware of it, especially when there's more outsiders on it. Like with this number we have here, with having two, I'd probably be okay with not worried about it for the first night. But try to feel out if we think there is a Fengu.
All right, makes sense. So, talking about Blood on the Clock Tower, when and how did you discover the game?
I'll say full on discovery was actually after I moved down here to Texas, and I met a really good friend of ours. You might know her. Her name's Nina. She was really into the game and mentioned it. And when I had heard the name of the game, but then I saw it and I was like, I lived in just north of Indianapolis for a while, and so at Gen Con, I just thought it was just another werewolf clone, and so I would just kind of walk by it. I didn't really think about it much. Didn't even pay attention or sit in and watch any games. But Nina, I think it was a birthday party that was going on at her house, and she was running it for some teenagers. So I sat in and watched, and then I started watching some other streams, and then at BGG Spring back in May of this year, May 2024, I sat in on two different games. Both of them I was evil, and just I like that social, the conversation. Like I said, you'll probably hear me talk about story. I like the story of a game, and so anything that I can kind of participate in that, I enjoy.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, compared to a lot of our guests, you're still relatively new. Although I know you've kind of at this point jumped into, I guess you could say the deep end anyway. But
Yeah,
yeah,
that's kind of my personality. I kind of absorb things pretty quickly, and so I'll definitely, I see it, I'll adjust it, I'll absorb it, and I'll jump right in. Like I jumped on your base scripts a few times, and then I was like, let's go ahead and just jump straight on. I could do it. And of course, Nina at that point was like, "Oh, I think you'll be fine."
yeah. As a storyteller who's always very conscious of people jumping in too quick,
Mhm.
I did appreciate that at least for a little while you did only sign up for base games, and then because it's not just your experience, it's everybody else's experience too, right?
Absolutely.
So I did appreciate that. You
Mhm.
played. It did take it didn't take very long, but
Right.
and then a month or two you played some other stuff, and yeah, I thought that was I don't know,
Yeah.
I like that
I
anyway. But
that's actually, I've talked to a couple people. That's kind of what I would recommend, especially in some of the discords that people are like, "Hey, I've only kind of played this, or I've only kind of seen this in person once or twice. I really want to be more involved. Online's a scary thing. Blah 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 blah." And I've actually said a couple times to people, it's like, get in and play a base script. If you want to stay with TB, stay with TB for a little bit. But if you're a person who wants to accelerate things, play the other base scripts. But once you're comfortable with just the player interaction, the characters can be learned because those are still,
Right.
codified, but player interaction, when you're comfortable with not being right, when you're comfortable with not having the right information, but still moving forward, then start branching out a little bit.
Yeah, you kind of get used to, okay, what does it feel like to talk to somebody one on one and talk about your abilities or what's going on in the game? Yeah, I like that
Absolutely.
point of view quite a bit. All right. So, do you remember what your first like actual game or few games were like that you played in?
Yes, my very first game was at, like I said, BGG Spring, and I was the Scarlet Woman. And I was like, okay, good. No responsibilities here whatsoever. I can just sit back and relax. And the imp had zero suspicion on her at all. So I was just like, okay, I'm not, it's never going to happen. It's not going to get past to me at all. Not to worry at all. And of course, they then star passed that very, like I think it was night 4. I think we were on final 5 actually, and that night she star passed to me with zero suspicion. But I was at that point ramping up the suspicion on me because
Hmm.
I'm the minion. At that point, I want to have suspicion on me. Well, long story short is the very next day I was executed. So second
Yeah.
second game was a lot faster. Second game actually was I was the imp next to the recluse who had the slayer on the other side of them, and there was a chef 1. The recluse spoke up and said, "Oh hey," and so the slayer shot me. But I had a Scarlet Woman, and they carried the game the entire rest of the way, and we won. So
Nice. Yeah, just how it goes sometimes. So, yeah.
absolutely.
So, what is it about the game that hooked you to it?
Oh, like I mentioned, story is a big thing. I just the fact that I wouldn't say acting, but it was like taking on a persona, just kind of like, hey, I'm this. Now with this game, there's a lot. I mean, madness hint is one of those things that you kind of have to do something like that with. But for the most part, you're kind of talking about your abilities. You're talking about things going. But there's stories that come out of these kind of interactions that'll people are going to remember long after this. And I just like that social that we're shared storytellers and all this. Yes, Sam, you're the storyteller. You're controlling the narrative to a certain extent, but we're also giving you pieces of information. That shared storytelling. It's one of the reasons why I enjoy things like uh, tabletop role playing games and stuff like that as well.
Hmm.
But it's just that we can all, as people, come together and have a common experience and enjoy it on our own grounds. Usually,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me because as a storyteller, yes, obviously I'm pulling strings and running things, but it's really the storyteller is very important,
hmm
and unfortunately, a bad story. Probably the biggest weakness of the game is a bad storyteller will just ruin the game.
hmm
But with that said, assuming you're having a good storyteller, it's a player-driven game. Most of my game storytelling is sitting and listening to everybody else, and they're the ones doing the game. So,
it's our
yeah,
job as the players to perform the actions, but also to feed you with information too, and in how you have the whole picture. You're driving the game, but we're providing the fuel, if you will, for how that story gets told. And sometimes those are very short stories.
yeah.
Other times, fiddlers have to come in. But
Yeah, I've told several stories on here before, so I won't go into them again. But some of the most memorable stories are the ones that end on day one, where a psychopath accidentally kills your demon, or you know, in a recent interview, kind of after the interview, we were talking about running quick games of TB, where the Slayer just picks somebody right at the start of day one, and it's a demon, and the game's over. And
yeah, it happens.
yeah. How much did you get to play in person before you started playing online?
It was just those 2 games. But on in person can kind of be difficult for people. Sometimes some people are a little apprehensive about that. I'll say physical social interaction, because they're in that proximity, and sometimes that's difficult. Um, and some people have a hard time talking face to face, but online they can have a little bit of a mask. So I think I would enjoy more of in person as well. But I think I'm going to enjoy them both the same. I'm just kind of that kind of a chameleon of a person where I can adapt myself to the situation. And as you can pretty much tell, I'm fairly comfortable talking. So
Yeah. I always prefer playing in person more than online, but online is playing online is what made it my favorite game of all time, hands down. Um, I,
it's hard to get people together sometimes, but
right.
so if I had like a regular group like you or something that where we had a core group of people around, I think we could probably do it. But and I would think I would enjoy that as well.
Yeah. Um, yeah. I was gonna say, like, when I talk to people online, I tell them, if you can get into an in-person game, do it. But also, my monthly in-person game, I'm telling some of them, it's like, hey, y'all should come play online because it's because you get to play more often and it's just easier. Our regular Friday games that you and Nina are part of. We have people from the East Coast, people from Texas, people from California, people from Canada,
Oh yeah.
UK, Australia. Um, yeah, it's a
Yeah.
very unique opportunity. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, one of the guys who jumps into the Friday games, Lewis, actually, friend requested me on Discord. Just kind of, and we talked several times. We had some cool conversations in the games sometimes, and so it's just reaching out, getting to know more people rather than just in a small localized area or
Right.
people you've known before who have moved away or you've moved away. It kind of helps expand that a lot. So I do enjoy that aspect of the online part.
Yeah. So, what kind of experience do you have with other social deduction games, and how do you think Blow on the Clock Tower compares?
Surprisingly, as social of a person as I am, I didn't have a lot of good experiences with people and social deduction games. There was a lot of I'll say it, some warehouse gate I'm sorry, werewolf gatekeeping going on in some of the areas around Indianapolis and stuff like that.
Hmm.
But again, werewolf wasn't necessarily a big game for me. And honestly, some of the Secret H and other games I was just cursory of aware of, but most of the time I didn't really participate in any of them. Just I saw them at Gen Con. I'd see people doing them. I enjoyed a few games of werewolf. I keep calling warehouse werewolf, but yeah, it not a whole lot of experience in it.
Okay. Yeah. What do you think? I mean, I know you don't have much experience with other social deduction games, but what do you think about Blow on the Clock Tower that makes it hit differently?
Well, I mean, my interaction with other social deduction games, the experience in them was just because I got into them. I saw what they were. I saw the I don't want to say the simplicity. I saw the base of it, but they were much more the game than they were the social. I honestly think Blood on the Clock Tower, with the uniqueness of the roles, ramps up the social a lot, and so I think it makes it greatly on par. You don't have so much of a game with some social aspects. I feel this is a game with an equal amount of social aspects in that because you could play a whole game of Clock Tower just being social and get reads, good or bad, and go through that game and have that enjoyment. And you can be that very technical person sitting there and analyzing roll by roll by roll, and then have to go on top of that and say, how would somebody play like this? And you can play games both ways. I love the fact that it gives a wide array of player interaction. And it's not just hey, the three of us are this same thing, and we all have to kind of do this.
I Travel Brain is an interesting one where you can build it to be information heavy or information light. I did run a 9-player game yesterday, and really the only information in the actual information in the game was the washerwoman, and that was it. But it came down pretty close. I ended up executing the minion at the end instead of the demon, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's cool to see the kind of like you said, game versus social, and the game can really do half and half or kind of focus one on the other, and it mixes it up a bit. But yeah,
And that's where the storyteller really kind of comes in, is the fact that
Mhm.
they build the bag with this is the base story that I want to tell. I might want to have super heavy amount of information, but I want to sprinkle in a bunch of misinformation, or I want to only have misinformation,
Mhm.
or you could have a game that is ultra information light, and that you just got to go with the socials on that. And that's the thing, the number of characters that are here that allow this to have those custom interactions is great.
Yeah, and I was thinking of from my understanding, Stephen Medway, the designer of this game, he basically he played Werewolf, I think maybe a handful of times,
Mhm.
and then he thought, then basically he went and created Blood on the Clocktower, and he's like, I'm going to create the game that I would want Werewolf to be.
Yeah.
All right, so let's say you're sitting down for a game, whether in person or online. What are you thinking before you draw your character token? Are you like looking at the script? Are you kind of feeling everybody out? What are you doing?
I typically just kind of review the script and just kind of figure out what I want to attempt to bluff in one way or the other. Because no matter what, whether I'm good or evil, I'm going to bluff something day one, anyways. Sometimes it might be my actual role is in the middle of that, but I like to try to feel everybody out on that first day. So once I got an idea of what's on the script, that's when I then shift my focus to kind of see, all right, what kind of conversations are people having before we even start, just to kind of see if maybe there's somebody who I can go talk to, because maybe they're in a lighter mood than normal, and maybe they're willing to kind of joke around a little bit. But that first day, I want to try to get my base social reads on a few people, so I work my bluffing into with that. So I'm kind of 50-50 on focusing on the script and people.
What kind of characters do you like to bluff?
Because I know that I tend to kind of play a little bit on the chaotic side socially. I tend to kind of lean into that a little bit, and but so I like to kind of bluff like the information roles, or the roles that you got to be, think twice about how is that going to react to being executed, or do I should I really keep that person around, that role around. So it kind it shifts script to script, but I like the information roles as a bluff for me. I hate to be an information role that gets executed too early. That's just that is the one thing that I dislike for myself personally, because I don't
Yeah,
want to negatively affect the game if I can help it.
fair enough. So you mentioned preferring to be good. Um,
Mhm.
Talk about that dynamic for you, the difference between being a good player and an evil player.
Well, like I said, I kind of read Miniony a lot, just because of the fact that I do kind of be a little chaotic. Um, so I like the minion roles. I don't necessarily like being the demon. I just feel there's a lot more a weight on my back to help the story. But I'm fine with the yeah, heck, a short game where I die, as evil. No big deal. I want to make sure that people are the people who really enjoy solving. I want to make sure those people have that opportunity. So whether I'm good or whether I'm evil, I feel I kind of play the same way, or at least I want to. I haven't yet hit my stride with understanding how I can be successful, quote unquote, game successful on the evil team, but it's something that I'm definitely enjoying.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely progression, and I mean, I don't know how well. I don't play as much as I storytell by far, but
Mhm.
people play 100 games and are still figuring out the interactions and how to, the strategies and there's a lot of. I think this game is both something with a lot of depth, but also a lot of breadth, considering how many
Absolutely.
characters and scripts you could play, and yeah,
I mean, there are some. You say strategies, and I really look at this, and I'm an analytical person by trade, um, but strategies are a little interesting in this game, because your strategy can only really go far. Because even though I'm saying that an artist should always ask a question to help solve the game in this way, that's my thought. But that doesn't mean the context of the game meant that that question that might be asked is the right question at that time. And someone else might have other information based on the characters on the script. And that person, their social reads might lead them to a different question. So there's not really, a strategy of you got this character, you play this way. You got to throw the social in there every single time.
Yeah, the there being no one way to play a character is definitely one of the best parts. And even if you look at the strategy advice on the wiki, it is like very common for one bullet point to suggest one thing, and then the second bullet point to suggest the exact opposite. Because it turns out
Absolutely.
either are viable strategies.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Yep.
All right, so you requested for us to have Sex and Violets here. Is that your favorite base script of the three?
Um, I would say that I wanted to choose it because of the fact that I want to interact more with Madness. Um, um, of the base three, there's nothing that can beat TB, but because of the balance that it is. But I honestly, in that world of, I really like BMR just because of the base chaos that's in play. Just like the information that is and isn't there, and that you really have to, as of every script, you pretty much, being executed or dying in the night is information, and you just got to know how to apply it as things go. So I asked for SNV because I want to interact with Madness a bit more generally, but I love the setup on this too, and I want to play this one more.
Yeah, that makes sense. What is it about Madness that you like?
Like going back to the storytelling, it's an interaction that you absolutely are in control of. Yes, generally it's thrust upon you with characters like Serenovus or other scripts like Harpy and stuff like that. In a lot of cases where you're being told to be mad about something, and you play into it, or you affect the game, but you can choose when to affect that game. And actually, to be honest, the only time so far that I've been able to interact with Madness was on our veiled scripts when I was the mutant. And the first thing I said was, as we came back to day one, hey, you know what? There's these things on the script. I could be this, I could be the mutant. And then you're like, hey, executed. but
Yeah,
uh, but I like Madness in the fact that it's another layer for the story for the players to use to help drive where they want the information to go.
yeah, yeah. Madness is fun. And especially on something like SNV where it's such an information heavy script. I and there's limited ways to have misinformation in the script. Madness
Right.
is misinformation
Hmm.
because going back to some games I ran yesterday, uh, there's a mutant who I thought about executing. I ended up not. I ended up being nice. Good ended up winning. I thought Good was probably going to win whether or not I
Hmm.
did shenanigans with that mutant. But uh, they were like, they kept telling people, "Oh, I'm a townsfolk. I don't gain information, but I'm a townsfolk. 100% of townsfolk. 1,000% of townsfolk." And I was like, well, I think that's pretty strongly hinting that you're a mutant.
Yeah, there and again, things like that based on what's on the script that might be not as mutant breaking as
Right.
normal. That veiled script, if there had been a tinker on that, I'm like, hey, I'm either a mutant or the tinker, and they executed me just because wanted to make it look like I was the mutant or something like that. But yeah, it's informational misinformation. I think it's great.
Yeah, it's fun. All right, we do like to talk about kind of a set of divisive characters to get a sense of what people think about them. You may not have as much experience with some of these as some others, but you can still theory craft them even if you haven't messed with
Yep.
them. But we do have one character that's from this script,
Mhm.
Snake Charmer. How do you feel about that character?
Yeah, interesting. I've been that a couple times now. And again, if you're in the mindset where you don't want to be on the evil team, you kind of got to be careful on what you do with it. I would encourage people to interact with it. I mean, depending upon the size of your particular game, you know, choose a couple people, but understand that when you are, honestly, the last game that I was a snake charmer, I chose somebody the first night, and then I wanted to get more information, so I kept choosing myself. And there was the last night before the game ended, I was about ready to choose somebody else, and I'm glad I didn't, because the person I was going to choose would have been the demon. Um, but yeah, I think snake charmer can be fun if you're willing to play both sides of it.
Yeah. All right. How do you feel about Poppy Grower?
I I will say I enjoy it. I enjoy it because as not like as an every game kind of a thing,
Right.
but being on the good side, obviously, as soon as you can figure out that, hey, I don't think they know who's in play, or if you're the puppy grower and they don't, you're going to try to get that information around, but try to keep yourself alive. On the evil side, I think it works out too, because it, rather than being just in the driver's seat, which evil typically is because of their ability to kill in the night, rather than being that, you've now got a little bit of an extra puzzle that, hey, I can actually affect the game by getting more information if I haven't found it. Some people say that Poppy Grower, evil team is not too bad because you'll usually find them. Yeah, but that's based on the group you have. If you're playing with a group of people you know all the time, then you're pretty much going to know where some hints might come at. I'm actually might be on the evil team, or I might not be, kind of a thing. Um, but in general, I like Poppy Grower because of the extra layer of puzzle that it brings.
Mm-hmm. And even if you have a group who can kind of figure out the evil team at some point, even that delay of coordination is not nothing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think this is getting to speculation territory,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
this is it feels like probably Poppy Grower is going to go on Midnight in the House of the Damned, and that is a script that's their description kind of has it. There's people will want to pretend to be evil, like there will be reasons for
Mm,
good players to pretend to be evil, uh, and I think it's interesting to think of Poppy Grower in that I guess paradigm. It'll be interesting to
absolutely.
see how it ends up at the end.
If that's their description of that one, which I thought I had heard it before as well, I feel Poppy Grower would actually fit really, really well into that.
Mm-hmm. And that one, you're probably, and again, this is speculation. Nothing. Well, I mean, some of this is
Absolutely.
like not really confirmed, but we have pretty strong hints at. You're probably looking at Damsel, Goblin, King and Choir Boy. Uh, yeah, a lot of stuff that can like,
Yeah.
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 I
Yeah.
think even Evan described it as so most basically in Clocktower they consider it a team game. Even like for example a klutz. Well, you get to talk with everybody before you have to make
Right.
your klutz pick. Uh,
Right.
Midnight in the House of the Damned, which is the only expert edition that they'll plan on having, is you can win or lose like with your individual character. So
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
It will be.
Yeah. Speaking of which, also probably on that script, again, speculation. How do you feel about Heretic?
If I had to give a one-liner, it feels bad, but um, I enjoy the puzzle that it brings sometimes. In the fact, think theory crafting again. Not really played much with it myself, but just I've observed enough games, whether they be online or otherwise, that Heretic probably has its place, but extremely once in a while. And you gotta know the people are willing to say, "Oh, hey." I put it very close to another character I'm sure you're going to ask about. Um, they both feel very much in line of the maybe.
Well, let's go with what I think might be the character you were thinking of. How do you feel about Atheist?
Exactly. That's the one. That's the one I was figuring. Again, if I had to say which one I prefer more, I would prefer the atheist character. Just because the fact that it feels fun. Like if I give Heretic feels bad, I'm giving Atheist feels fun. And I'm giving that because of the fact that it's it is everybody has their abilities doing things, and you're looking for, why is this game different than normal? Well, it's because there's no evil in play.
Hmm.
But finding out, even the person who has that atheist token, it's about convincing them. It's about convincing town that you are who you say you are.
Yeah.
So again, between those two, I definitely, Heretic feels bad because by the time you realize what it is, you realize that the truth of what's in play. It's like a, okay, but with Atheist, it's much more of a, I could be wrong. Let me check a little further. So it just feels a little better.
Yeah. It might help too that really the design goal is if Atheist is in play, good should be winning probably at least like 90% of the time.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, how do you feel about Legion?
Legion. I have been Legion once. And again, because of the way I typically play, it falls right into the way I play a little bit.
Hmm.
Um I can see where it'll feel bad for people who aren't willing to be the minority on the good team. They don't like, they think that feels bad to them because they want to be part of that puzzle solving. And a lot of times Legion are become more vocal because they're Legion. So that's a tell that I've observed is if a player is really more out there with what they're saying and doing and more willing than normal, guess what? That might be a big hint that there's a Legion, and they're Legion this time because they're willing to kind of be part of that team that dies.
Yeah, Legion's very social. It feels like a big act, really, that most of the players have to put on for a handful of people, which some people don't like, but I think it's
Yeah.
interesting to watch play out.
Yep. Something that I've observed a couple times is some people, not even in Legion games, but they'll start when they're in their claiming, when they're talking, they might claim a good character and a minion character, just to kind of like throw things out there. And I think that's one of those things that could easily go well, asterisks, for Legion games too. Is you get in there, be willing to be seen as maybe on the evil team. What if Legion's on the script even?
All right, moving on to our next section that I like to call this or that. I'll just name two characters. You can respond however you will.
Mhm.
It is purposely open ended. So we'll start with Mayor or Sailor.
Ooh. So Mayor's one of those ones where you can get deflections off of you if you've seemed threatening enough to be attempted to be killed at night, but you really want to try to get yourself down there to the end. Pseudo mini protection there where you're taking, if things are bouncing to others, but that's not always a feels good. Sailor, kind of the same story. You run the risk of drunking yourself, which means you're open to things, but you run the risk of drunking others too. So, okay, either one. If I prefer to be a little bit more active, so I'd probably go on the sailor route between the two, but they both feel very similar to me
Yeah,
for different reasons.
yeah. It's almost like I purposely thought the same thing.
Shock.
These can be hard to come up with sometimes, but sometimes I just look at a character and be like, oh well, these kind of feel the same, and just be curious to see what they think about
I'm
it. It
wondering
helps
how
that.
many people
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
sorry. Well, I was just saying, I'm wondering how many people actually put that connection together between Sailor and Mayor. The fact that they are so close like that, and it like I said, it feels very close because of what they are. But one is basically the active version of it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, speaking of two other characters that are somewhat similar, how do you feel about, or not how you feel about, but Fisherman or Savant? How about
Fisherman and Savant. One's easy to bluff, and the other is absolutely a nightmare to bluff.
that?
But Fisherman, it's you've got one, what the storyteller believes should be game winning or game helpful, game driving information for you at that stage of the game. Fisherman feels good in that regard, but you really got to know what question what you're going to go get going on there. And then Savant is, you got two things and you've got to decipher that. And heaven forbid you've got, Vortox, or you got poisoned or anything else like that. And you end up getting a situation where, you know what, at this point in time, your Savant information, they both have to be false. I can't give you anything good as a storyteller. I like them both. I've not actually had to deal with either of them, but uh deciphering the information you get out of both of them is a wonderful little puzzle there. I like them both. Like I said, Savant is my, I would really hate to be trying to bluff that, and I'll probably avoid bluffing it if I can, unless I'm in a good mood and hey, I'll make up some information I believe about the game state. So
there's an old story where I was actually playing. I was the imp in catfishing. Manny was running it. And this was quite some time ago, but I think you would probably do things a little bit different. But my bluffs were, I think it was Savant, Snake Charmer, and Drunk.
mm,
He'd put in Drunk because we had a pit hag, who he wanted as a hint. It's like, oh, you could make a Drunk for free. Anyway, long story short,
yeah.
I ended up going with Savant. It was my first time trying to bluff Savant. Uh, but it turned out I did a pretty good job, because it turns out being a storyteller, I was able to just kind of pull random statements out that actually were kind of pretty close to like accurate to the game at the
Mhm.
time, even though I had no idea.
Nice.
So that was fun. I wouldn't want to do that very often, but I was able to give it a go and able to pull it off. Well, I say pull it off. We did lose in the
Yeah.
final three, but did make it to the final three at least, and yeah,
But you
it
felt
was
your
fun.
bluff was adequate for the game
Right.
state and driving it. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So a couple more characters here:
Mhm.
Saint or Recluse.
Ooh, Saint and Recluse. As discovered in my last game, I have been the Recluse the most out of all the games I've played. And so I don't mind being the Recluse, because I'm gonna be looked at and read that way anyways. So to me, it feels good. And I'm starting to shift away from trying to just get out of the way early as being the Recluse, because um as days go on, I know I'm going to be seen as miniony anyways. But I'm a bit more uh confident in my game solving and my analyzing. So Recluse is cool. Uh and the Saint, it's one of those ones where you've got to look at the game state and find an alternate way to get out of the way. I think one needs to get out of the way, and the other can hang around. You if you think for any reason as the Saint you're gonna be suspicious enough, or if you're seeing the game shift that way, I think the Saint is that one of those alternate win condition characters that, for good, it definitely has earned its place right there. Solidly, it will always be an outsider because it's an instant lose.
Hmm.
But you gotta play with it a little bit, find the right way to get yourself either, you know taken out at night, or if you've got something like a gunslinger in play, or now with the gnome, you know
Yeah.
figure out a way to get yourself out of the way.
Yeah. In Saint, you can either, obviously one tactic is to just try to claim powerful rolls, hope the demon kills you
Right.
at night. Of course, that's a little harder if there's a spy.
Right.
But also alternatively, you can just try to just get really socially trusted and get people believing you, and make it so the demon needs to kill you at night because you don't want to player everybody believes in the final three.
And
Um,
all of that highlights the fact that in this game there are so many different ways to make yourself valuable, and figuring out which one works for you, which one works for the characters on the page, and which one works for the other players, to try to play them into a, hey, I need to be killed at night.
yeah. All right, let's go on to our next two here. Appropriately, we have either Klutz or Puzzle Master.
Yep. Puzzle Master, obviously, right off the bat, is that kind of an active alternate condition there. If you can make an accurate guess, you're gonna get the information that solves the game. But again, trying to prove to everybody else that what you got was correct, or if you believe it to be false, hey, I was given this, so we can rule that person out. And klutz, of course, is that instant, hey, guess what? I think that person is good. So I'm going to prove that they're good. So once you've got something like that, once you've got a character that maybe, let's be honest, if you have got another player character who people are getting suspicion on them, but you trust, I mean, what's the flavor text on the token? Oops. Yeah. You can give it a shot, you
Right.
can try to do something. I've claimed klutz in a game, and a player was had a lot of suspicion on them, but based on the information that I was getting from other people, I felt that they were pretty good. And as soon as I was executed, and I said, "All right, I'm claiming klutz," and everybody's like, "No, don't ever choose them. Choose this person." Well, I chose that person. Guess what? I was right. They were not evil. They weren't. So it worked out really well.
Yeah. It's also always spicy to choose a twin.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Hey, let's throw the coin toss at it.
Yeah, we had a game some years ago. It was probably like within the last year, I guess. I don't. But anyway, it was the klutz was executed, and he really trusted who actually was a good twin. So he picked a good twin, and the game continued. The problem was our philosopher had picked a klutz ability. So the next day he had to be like, "You're actually drunk, so you didn't clear the twin at all."
Yes.
Uh,
Well,
yeah,
and you throw in the boffin now, and formerly easily cleared interactions are not so much.
right. All right. So we'll go through some minions here. Speaking of boffin, let's go with boffin
Mhm.
or boom dandy.
Yeah, I like the boffin. I like what has changed. I like the fact that the 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 demon now has a confirmable role and activity in the town, but that also doesn't make them not the demon. It's like you have to understand, even though it's a thought everybody had before, is that okay, they're saying this, they're doing these things, but they might still be the demon. Well, now you're doing that about somebody who you have who has confirmable roles. It's not just the thought or the social or the world you've built. um Boom Dandy is one of those ones. I think it's fun. It You have it in place when you want to have some of those quick games, or the option to have a potential quick game.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Again, throwing it on strips with pit hags makes things even more spicy or interesting. And again, it's the shared interaction of the storyteller wants to set up, here are your tools, town, to complete this story. I'll assist with the skeleton in the narrative for you, but you tell me what kind of a game you want to play. Both of
I
them, I think, do.
Yeah, I like that it gives reasons to be suspicious of people who are okay to be executed.
Hmm.
I've written this into extension cord. Um, because it's easy to be like, oh, I'm the spent artist on day one. Let's go ahead and let's give the cannibal the artist ability. Um, and people do that quite a bit. But I did run a game of that where Jeremy was the boom dandy, and he just blind playing artist. He didn't know. I think it ended up being a bluff, but he didn't know it was a bluff when he was bluffing it.
Yeah.
But he said, "Hey, I asked my artist question. I heard there's a cannibal. Let's go ahead and execute me, and we'll get a second artist question." And this was day one, and explosion happens, and evil won.
Yeah. Well, and the with the new Boom Dandy is, I think, a good step forward with that
Mhm.
character, because it moves it from that 1 minute of conversation down to a 10 count. And again, not 10 seconds, but
Right.
again, storyteller making sure that they're controlling it. That 10 count of, you got to figure out who you want to win, you know?
Yeah. And I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out. I have ran extension cord once since then, but I didn't end up running a boom dandy. I was planning to, but then the game ended up being a bit smaller, and I didn't want to run it just because it was changed and see how it runs, but you gotta keep everybody on their toes. So,
Well, with that 1 minute, Good had plenty more opportunity to
yeah.
talk through things. And so you quickly got down to a final three, which really meant that there was less opportunity for evil to sow seeds of misinformation or prove their own trustworthiness. And so that 1 minute meant that there was mostly good information right there at the top. With a 10 count, there's not enough time to have those conversations.
Mm-hmm. All right. Next couple characters here. Let's go with Poisoner or Scarlet Woman.
Well, I've had experiences with Scarlet Woman. I don't know that I've been poisoned. I definitely haven't been the poisoner that I can think of. I like poisoning in the fact that, again, getting that moving the misinformation around is an option for you. Or if you find the character that you want to be as your frame, you can just sit there and keep poisoning them as long as you are. At least a couple of nights of information will uh, cast a shadow on the rest of it. And I think Scarlet Woman's a great out for those scripts that need it. It 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 the limitation of it down to the last five is a good limitation there, so that way you can't just ping pong it at the end. But um, I like them both. I think they have their place.
I like that Poisoner encourages a player to. It gives them a reason to be going around trying to figure out who the good team is and who are good poison targets.
You might find a couple of players who have characters that are not active things, who might be claiming an active role, and you go poison them, and you know okay, that was a wasted night. So that means they did their job. The good team did their job of kind of shifting that away. But then you find somebody who's willing to claim all information roles, and they actually are an information role, and you poison them, and you're like, I don't know what information they're getting yet, but I'm definitely going to make sure that none of that is good. So,
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to some demons. We have Imp or Fangu.
yes, the classic Imp or Fangu. I mean, Imp. You've got that out as long as you got a minion available. You can, a star pass and make sure that you can either get that suspicion and you have that out even without the Scarlet Woman. I like Imp. It's classic. It's straightforward, and the specialness of it is the fact that as long as I've got a minion, as long as I got a buddy out there, I can get bring all the suspicion to me and move it off.
Right.
Fangu, I used to misunderstand Fangu. I used to think that they could keep jumping between each and every one of the outsiders that was done, and I want to say it was about the fourth or fifth time that I played with a Fangu that I realized, wait, no, the ability says that doesn't happen because you
Uh,
jump once.
yeah. Old Fangu before the game was released actually did used to be that way where it
Okay,
jumped infinitely. It would the Fangu would die and then you would like basically swap characters. So the Fangu would be whatever outsider. The Fangu would be dead, but they would become the outsider that they killed, and then the outsider they
okay,
killed would not be killed and would become the Fangu. And there's actually a homebrewish script that is kind of based around this idea that the old idea where the Fangu could just still continually jump. It's a
right.
fun novelty to play every now and then, but it is also
I
quite
like it.
unbalanced.
Yeah. I like the Fengu as it is with the released game in the fact that you are looking to you can play a little bit more evil. You can play a little bit more suspicion, and as long as you found a place to jump, as long as you found somewhere to go, and especially if somebody starts saying, "Man, I think my information is wrong," guess what? They might be the drunk.
Hmm.
So I have enjoyed the Fangu games that I've been part of.
That's good. All right, one last one here. We'll do Leviathan or Kazali.
Ooh. So Leviathan is, that everybody knows what's going on, and you're just sitting there waiting for them to not find you. That's what you're hoping. Kazali, you get to choose your team. Um, I don't know. I definitely haven't been part of any Leviathan games, and so but that definitely feels like the puzzle solver's dream. Is the fact that people aren't dying, but we have to figure it out. So
Yeah,
that's the reverse of the death is information, if you will,
yeah,
because you don't want death to be happening until you're right.
yeah. Leviathan is almost certainly going to go in Garden of Sin, and its description talks about basically, being a, I can't remember the wording, but basically solving puzzles, and people don't die at night. Instead, there's a time limit on the, like a day limit on the
Mm,
game. It should be quite interesting.
yeah. And the Kazali, getting to choose your team on the script. You really got to also know the players too. I I haven't played in. I know I haven't played in it, but I've watched several Kazalis, and I think it would be fun and interesting. And there are those people who really don't want to be. Hey, I had a good role, and now I'm not that. So,
Nina.
you know,
Yeah. All right. So last question here. Looking at the script, Sex and Violets. What character would you like to be in real life?
ooh, I forgot about this question. That's a good point.
It's a question that's most fun when somebody doesn't know it's coming up or forgets it's coming up.
Yep, I forgot. You know, in real life, I would probably say a philosopher. Um, most that the at one point in time, at some point in time in my life, I feel I've gathered enough information that I can make a choice and be who I really want to be.
All right. I like that. All right. Before we go, is there anything you'd like to plug?
Nope. Other than Friday nights with on Hard Claim, watching on the script, on the stream watching that. I enjoyed watching it before I joined on the Discord and stuff like that. I know we play larger number of games, and the group it shifts a little bit. Sometimes we're a bit more vocal group. Sometimes we're a bit quiet in the night kind of group.
Yeah.
But that and yeah, just honestly, if you're even interested, anybody who's watching this, if you're interested in the game at all, just jump in and try it. Just give it a shot, because if you at all enjoy interactions with people and you want to have a good laugh, you want to have a good time, and you want to be coordinating, a game, this is great.
Yeah. All right. Well, Steve, thank you for joining us this week.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And then thank you all for watching. We'll be back next week with another episode of Hard Claim. Thank you.